So, in short, when I joined forces with this geologist, a couple of years later, he had better and better data. And in addition to this 140 million year oscillation, you could also see a 32 million year oscillation in the data over, say, the past 150 million years, where we had good enough data. And this looked awfully suspicious as being the vertical motion, like the motion of the solar system perpendicular to the galactic plane. But there were two things which didn't add up. One is that standard models for cosmic ray diffusion in the galaxy required that the region over which the cosmic rays diffuse is relatively large, of order several thousand light years. And then this means that the oscillation that the sun has in a perpendicular direction, which the amplitude is 300 light years, is not enough to see a large variation in the cosmic ray flux density. Okay, you'll have some kind of maybe a second order density distribution, and if you're moving up and down, you'll be right at this peak and you wouldn't see any large variations. So that was one problem. And the other problem was that at that point, there were estimates for what the density at the galactic plane is based on looking at the kinematic of stars moving in a perpendicular direction. Basically, if you plot like a phase space of say the velocity of the stars versus the distance from the galactic plane, there would be you'll have this two-dimensional plane, and you'll have this distribution of stars, and if the density is higher, you would expect the velocities to be larger for the same vertical distance. Now, so that was in 2004 already. We had this paper, and eventually it didn't get published because I didn't feel easy because of these two problems. So we put it aside, and then in 2011, he sent me his updated data, and in the updated data, you could see 15 oscillations of the 32 million years. It's like extremely clear that you see these temperature variations. It's like an 11 sigma signal. Oh. You don't get things like that brushed under the carpet easily. Now, at that point, I had a PhD student who did the modeling of the cosmic ray flux diffusion. And it turns out that if you assume that the sources are not distributed equally in the galactic plane, but they are concentrated in the spiral arms, as we know they are, then you cannot allow the cosmic rays to diffuse to a distance of several thousand light years. It has to be only a few hundred. And this has to do when you look at the production of beryllium-10 and boron by the cosmic rays. I won't get into it because it's another discussion. But the thing is that in order to, if you assume a model where the sources are in the spiral arms and not in the galactic plane homogeneous, then in order to fit the same cosmogenic data, you need a halo which is much smaller, which is actually what you would expect from the interstellar medium, because the interstellar medium has this turbulent gas only within a few hundred light years. So that was one problem. And then I looked again at the dynamics of the stars and the estimate for what the density is, and I realized that there is a systematic bias which wasn't considered. Basically, what happened is that when the shocks of the spiral arms pass a distribution of stars, they would cause the stars to oscillate, to ring, Okay, so the whole distribution would be oscillating, would puff up and squish periodically. And what would happen is that you would bias the measurements that you estimate for the density of at the galactic plane. So you might think that the density is low and the period should be around 40 million years, while in fact the density is higher and the period should be lower, like 32 million years, which is what we have seen. So I realized that the two biggest constraints that we had a few years earlier weren't real. And then I looked again at the 32 million year oscillation, and it turns out that the 32 million year oscillation, the period of the 32 million years is not constant. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. There is a 180 million year oscillation in the period of the 32 million year oscillation. And it turns out that this has the right period and the right phase to be the radial epicyclic motion of the solar system in the galactic when we're orbiting the galaxy. We're not orbiting in a circle, but instead we're oscillating in and out. Now, when you have all the mass concentrated at the center, like you have in the solar system, then already Kepler knew that the orbits are closed ellipses. But if the density is smeared, then the radial oscillation is not the same as the orbital period. The orbital period is in this case, it's 250 million years. But we're moving in and out with a period of 180 million years. So the frequency modulation that you see, or the period modulation that you see in the 32 million year period, has the periodicity and the phase we expect from the radial motion. And when we're closer to the galactic center, we're oscillating faster. When we're further out, we're oscillating slower. The density is lower and we're oscillating slower.